Hello, Ryo.
Hey, Zen.
Welcome to the ClosedWon Sales Show.
I appreciate you having me.
Yeah, how's your Friday?
It's going pretty good. Just wrapping things up. I'm enjoying the music. This definitely has some happy hour vibes as a substitute for going out.
Right, you still go out? People go out still? So tell me, what are you drinking for our happy hour edition? You have your drink with you?
Similar vibes. It's got with the blue water bottle.
You need the bio water. Good for you.
Yes.
Let me hydrate. We got 2 minutes. All right, and for those who are watching the replay, feel free to fast forward 3 minutes in. Or a minute in. Okay, so you've been reviewing the format, right?
Yeah. I'm not like an expert, but I get the general gist.
Good. Let me try to change my camera here. Oh, there we go. Now we're facing each other. So you're thinking about creating your own show, huh?
Yeah, I probably have some things to learn from you, once we get to that point.
More of a podcast medium or like a Twitch, like gaming or content as in YouTube?
Yeah, it'd probably be video interviews like this, but focused on content producers, writers, copywriters, basically people who fit in our target demographic.
Content writers, publishers?
Yeah, publishers.
Yeah, Ecamm if you're using Mac, and then OBS if you're using Windows is what I've heard.
Got it.
Yeah, but I think once you get started, you might get hooked because it's a lot of fun.
For sure, yeah. I mean, I can tell you're having fun with it.
Every week on Fridays at 5 p.m. sharp. Let me prep here. In case you want to monitor, you can turn on your YouTube as well on your phone.
Got it. How's Dre doing?
It's doing well. All right, here we go. 0.
Okay.
So what makes a successful entrepreneur, founder? Here we go.
Let's do it.
Hey everyone, I'm Zen, founder of ClosedWon. Welcome to the ClosedWon Sales Show. Please enjoy your drink, and together let's cover basic sales tips for first-time founders. To begin the show, I share motivational videos to get the blood pumping. Next, we interview successful entrepreneurs, and they will share their secrets on how they push their own superhuman limits. Together, we'll learn their journey, their failures, mistakes, even their daily habits so that you too can follow a path made for bosses. At the end of the show, our guests will share exactly how they close their first 20K MRR, monthly recurring revenue, or their first 10 clients, so that we learn some of their wisdom. And of course, our ultimate goal is to help you generate revenue and close those deals. So make sure you stick around. Real quick, let's say hello to our audience. Hello, Shar. Hello, SEO video show. Ryo was just asking about you. Here he is. And don't forget to subscribe. So, what makes a successful founder?
To be a leader means one thing and one thing only. It means you have followers. That's it. It's not about learning your style of leadership and how to adjust your style to fit the situation at hand. That's management, right? Leaders only have one thing: they have followers. A follower is somebody who raises their hand and volunteers to go where you're going. They raise their hand and volunteer to go in the direction that you're pointing. And so to lead others means that you have a clear vision of a world that does not yet exist, a world that could exist. And by articulating that cause, that vision, that purpose over and over and over again, it inspires people who believe what you believe, who want to see that world built, to join, to go with you, to figure out ways, you know? And so for me, in my work, what leadership means is articulating this world in which the vast majority of us wake up every single day, inspired to go to work, and come home every single day fulfilled by the work that we do. That doesn't mean we have to like every day, you know, but we can love every day. You don't like your children every day, but but you love your children every day, right? And so the more I talk about this world that does not yet exist yet, because right now the world we live in, the vast majority of people, 90% plus, don't love what they do. They may like it, but they don't love it. When I talk about this world, it inspires others who believe what I believe and want to see this world built, join up and figure out in their own way how to advance that vision so it becomes real. My role is to continue to pound the pavement and put that vision out there.
Mm-hmm. So a founder is a leader, and a leader inspires others to believe in a clear vision. To me, that kind of sounds like sales in a way. For Mark Zuckerberg, it's a world where we connect. For Jeff Bezos, it's where you can find anything and buy anything online. For Steve Jobs, it's to make tools that advance humankind. Daniel Schreiber, CEO and founder of Lemonade, expands on how to communicate that vision. Let's listen in.
One of the things that I think entrepreneurs often underrate is storytelling. So I think that the job of an entrepreneur, of a founder, is to create a vision of what a future might look like, to have a concrete notion of a better place that you want to get to. And that's step one, envisioning. But step two is really investing in the art of storytelling. So less Excel, more PowerPoint, less numbers, more vision and storytelling. I think one of the toughest lessons I learned, and I learned it early on in my career, is about firing people. I used to procrastinate. I used to drag the process out. And I thought, and I justified it to myself and to others, that I was being thoughtful and kind and generous, and I was being none of those things. Beating about the bush did them no favors whatsoever, and to the extent that I was being generous with somebody else's money. And it was a tough lesson to learn that really being direct, being fast to cut when you need to, doing it in a dignified manner that actually really does respect the other person and treats them as the adult that they are, rather than trying to soften it to the point that they don't quite know what's going on, and you try to reassure yourself that you're doing a kindness, but you really aren't. My career has had successes, it's had plenty of failures as well. I've got a checkered career. But I think that on the occasions that I've been successful, it's due to two or three things. One, which I actually rank really highly, is good fortune. I think it's very tempting to underrate the importance of luck in all good things that happen to us. And the luck can be literally dumb luck, random things that fall your way. But it's also just the luck of where you were born, what time you were born, into what kind of family, what kind of genes, all of that. All things that you inherit without having done anything in order to deserve them per se. So I think luck is an important thing. And then the second one, and this is an expression of that luck, is working with amazing people. And the good things that have happened during my tenure have always happened because I have amazing partners, amazing investors, amazing people that I worked with. And the third thing, which has been just a constant in my life, is my wife. Daniela is the love of my life. She's been my partner in thought and in action since we got to know each other many years ago. And again, none of the successes that I have had would I have had without her. Doing what you love always involves sacrifices and tensions and not being able to do all the things that you want, and trade-offs that you have to make on a continuous basis.
There was actually a lot of tips in there. So the first was storytelling. The second, definitely being a founder, sometimes you have to kind of put kindness out of the way, in a sense where if you have to let someone go, let them go. And he also talks about good fortune and good luck, which is great. But the last point I really like, which is a good wife, a good partner, a good husband who understands the trade-off and sacrifices of a founder, all the things that you have to make in order to build a good company. So very touched my heart for sure. So let's listen into number 3, a retired Navy SEAL, and he talks a little bit about leadership.
And this guy shows up, and he's got a nice smile on his face, and he's super humble. And I remember one of the first things he said to us was like, "I look forward to working with you guys." And I was, that word right there, I'm gonna work with you guys. Not I'm in charge, I'm glad I'm taking over, I'm glad to be your commander. It was nothing like that. He said, "Hey, I'm looking forward to working with you guys." So all of a sudden, it was totally different. And he started putting us in charge of things. Instead of him coming up with a plan, he would say, "Hey, you guys come up with a plan and let me know how you wanna do it." And all of a sudden, we had all this ownership. And that made me reflect on the way the first guy had acted compared to the way this guy had acted. And I realized how important it was to be a humble leader and to listen to other people and to give ownership to other people.
My next guest is definitely a humble leader. I worked with him back in 2013, and I am so excited to learn from him today. He is going to teach us what it takes to become a successful entrepreneur and founder. Previously, he founded, scaled, and sold a marketing technology company called TINT for $30 million in August of 2018. He bootstrapped this company with 2 of his amazing co-founders, Nikhil Aitharaju and Tim Sae Koo. He bootstrapped it from 3 employees to 40 full-time employees to $5 million in annual recurring revenue and 1,000 plus customers all over the world, in 172 countries to be precise. Ryo continues to serve as an advisor to TINT because he is passionate about building useful products. While at TINT, Ryo was responsible for tech and marketing as CTO and head of growth. Today, he's doing it again, solving a very personal problem he encountered while building TINT. He's building tools for content marketers and SEOs. Use topic.com. Topic. Right now, he will help us understand what it takes to be a successful founder. So please help me welcome co-founder of Topic, Ryo Chiba. Welcome.
Thank you, Zen. Appreciate the welcome.
Yeah, I'm so happy to see you. Whenever I see you, my heart's just like, oh, it's Ryo. So tell us, walk us through your origins. How you grew up, where you were born, like how did Ryo come to be? Like how did you get so humble and successful all at the same time?
Well, my story is basically I grew up in the Midwest and came out to California for undergrad down in Los Angeles, where I met my co-founders. We were undergrads at the time in the engineering department and partnered up with a business student. We started a social network, which was called Hype Marks. And it was basically a Pinterest clone. But at the time, the startup scene was picking up again in Los Angeles. So we were able to get some seed funding. We were working on that for a while. But eventually failed to turn that into anything, but luckily at the last minute pivoted to a B2B product, which, like you mentioned, we were able to grow organically and eventually exit about 2 years ago. So that's my background.
Oh, man. Okay, so let's unpack that. Before you got to Hype Marks, you did meet amazing founders. I think whenever you're building a startup, it's all about the team that you put together. How are you able to find such amazing co-founders to build Hype Marks with you, which eventually turned into TINT?
Absolutely. I think that that's such a fascinating problem that luckily I have not had to go through in a long time. But it is a lot like dating. It only works if you put yourself out there. And at the time, I was putting myself out there a lot in terms of partnering with business school students and figuring out what I could build for them so that I could kick off or basically juggle a couple projects at any given time and see how they panned out. I think the general philosophy is the more doors you have open, the more likely you'll have one that you can walk through to turn into a success. So yeah, it was just a matter of meeting as many business type people out there as possible, and they're always looking for engineers to build things. So it was pretty easy to get the ball
Amazing.
rolling there.
Wow. Whoever's around you is so lucky because imagine what you just, I mean, I'm listening to what you're saying, and you literally said, I went around to multiple potential partners and I asked them what I can build for them. Nobody does that. Like, I mean, I've never met anybody that actually does that. Like, can you imagine? Did you
Yeah,
just,
that's the magic of college. It's like, or the university environment. You've just got so many like they don't have the expertise necessarily, but they have the passion and interest in starting something new. But yeah, in terms of, I feel like that plays into a lot with the teams aspect of what was mentioned before. Building a great team is how, in terms of a founding group, a lot of times the passion outweighs the expertise or the interest in the topic, and the real, drive to get something done is often a much more valuable skill than somebody who has years of experience or has worked at a big fancy company.
Okay, so this drive that you mentioned, when you first put together Hype Marks, were you passionate about that project was there a particular problem that you were trying to solve with Hype Marks, and were you passionate about it? Like, what do you think it is about Hype Marks that made you pivot into TINT Up? Was there failures or lessons learned from that particular project?
Yeah, one story that I like to bring up is, so the CEO of TINT, that previous company, we met as college students, and I remember walking around my dorm, and he called me because he really wanted me to be full-time on this project. And Tim was trying to convince me to join him and basically forego my full-time offer to Twitter and join him on this startup journey. And so he came up with every single reason why I should join him. That this could be a big idea, that you'll have so much freedom. He was basically pulling every stop out to try to get me to join him. And the thing that really convinced me was, he was like, yeah, and think about it. Like, we're a solid group of people that we can work together. And even if this isn't the idea, I know that we can figure it out eventually. And that was the turning point for me, because it signaled to me that here's this guy who is, like you mentioned, humble enough to understand that this idea that he's so into, that he's poured his life into so far, might not be the end product that we end up building. And very few people, very few business students in university settings, had that mindset yet. It sort of is acquired over time. But he had the humility to bring that up, and I was like, okay, so I can definitely see us working. Because like you mentioned, for me, it's not necessarily the specific idea at the time that got me working on that problem, but it was more so the idea of having the freedom to create something that people can actually use, and then seeing it in real life.
Yeah, you mentioned freedom twice, and Tim got you on the freedom, one of the freedom points. It's funny. It's a little ironic because when you build a startup, you actually lose some of your freedom in a way, because you're constantly working 24/7 on building something, because it's your own, it's your baby, right? And so, yes, you have your own hours. You get to work your own hours and work on have your own ownership on certain projects. But the time is something that you definitely have to make a trade-off and sacrifice on.
Definitely. There's, in terms of the trade-offs, there's time, there's the, where you set your expectations in your life even. One thing that I think is fascinating is talking to people who have different social social groups around them. Like some people have a lot of friends in tech, or some people who have a lot of friends who are doctors, some people who have a lot of friends like who aren't, in these privileged bubbles. And I consider myself really lucky because a lot of my closest friends aren't in this, tech bubble. And so I don't have to compare myself against these really high standards, because one of those things going into, your own venture is that you have to set your expectations low, because otherwise it's just so draining to see all of your friends in corporate America earning bank, and you're just sitting here, trying to push your own little project forward. But anyway, it just got me thinking about that.
Yeah, no, I know what you mean. Yeah, you're absolutely right. There's certain bubbles. Like you have friends in tech. You have some friends. Like for me, I'm in the LGBT community, and so my LGBT community is definitely separate from my tech, and we talk about completely different things. And then I have a hiking crew, I have a skiing crew, I have a cooking crew. It's so interesting. But I have been creeping on your blog, actually. I saw one of your journeys, your biking journey. Tell us about this, because I want to know. Okay, I'm going to skip the failures for now, because I really want to know, how do you have time to bike? First tell us what you did with the whole Zion trip, and why did you decide to take up that project or that hobby with your wifey?
It was actually with my ex-roommate and friend Steven. And so back, a couple years back, we did a bike tour from Los Angeles or San Francisco to Los Angeles, sort of on a whim, being like dudes in our 20s wanting to see where we could push ourselves. But it turned into more of a regular thing. And so most recently, we try to do one every year or two. So most recently, we did a bike tour from Zion National Park to the Grand Canyon, which was about a week-long trip. But in terms of the time, it only takes a week to do a trip like that. And
Wow.
most people, get a week of vacation every quarter or two. So it's relatively realistic if you build up some time for yourself. But
Stamina.
stamina.
Well, look, okay, the reason why I brought it up, and the reason why I think that's important and relevant to what makes a successful founder is a lot of these founders are constantly pushing themselves, not just in tech startup, but physically, mentally, emotionally. And so I feel like this is one of those things that you're actually pushing yourself to see if you could achieve it and execute on one of the bucket list items. And is that a trait of a successful founder, which is just constantly pushing yourself? Like, for instance, Tony Hsieh, like he was pushing himself on not breathing and taking micro LSDs or something and mushrooms. Like, I don't know, I read that from an article, not fact check it, it's not true maybe, but things like that. Like, is this just is just a trait that you're constantly pushing yourself with every single aspect of your life?
I think that's a fascinating analogy. This bike touring founder startup pushing themselves. I hadn't connected that idea, so that's
Right.
a cool insight. But I think that one of the key things that I think is a misunderstanding or a misconception about an ideal founder is that the pushing yourself has to be painful for it to be worth something. I think the more important thing is that you're actually enjoying the pushing yourself. And when it comes to the bike touring, for somebody who is less familiar with it or hasn't done it before, it might seem like a real chore to bike every day, but really doing it is really therapeutic and enjoyable and relaxing. And I catch up on all my podcast or all the podcasts I like listening to, and read a couple audiobooks on the way, and it's really pleasant. And I think for most people, if they want to become a successful founder, is identifying the thing that they really enjoy about the founder journey, or what they can bring to the table when they're pushing their venture forward, and focusing in on that and trying to do as much of that as possible, because that's the only way for things to be sustainable. Because there are going to be so many challenges that come up along the way. You'd have to be insane for you to be pushing yourself in a way that you didn't enjoy. So, yeah.
Yeah, there's a really famous video out there by Elon Musk, and he uses the analogy actually, being a founder or starting a company is like eating glass, basically. And I'm like, and enduring, having the ability to endure that, and somehow turning that pain into some kind of joy. That's how I understood what he was trying to say. I don't know, maybe this is just a way for founders to cope with the long hours, problem solving constantly. I as a founder, I feel like there's always something that you're learning, and you have to love to learn, and you need that growth mindset. And so when you fail and you make a mistake, it's kind of like, okay, what did I do wrong? How can I make it better constantly? And so you have to be okay to make a mistake almost every day. It's like, okay, I made a mistake. Now how do I fix it? What are your thoughts about mistakes and some of the lessons that you've learned as a founder at TINT now that you're transitioning and growing topic?
Yeah, mistakes are a fun topic because I have had many. Both of the companies that I've started so far have started with mistakes. The first being Hypemarks, which was a social network that failed. And then now with Topic, actually, in the year before we started Topic, we were working on a separate product called Apparatus. But it was going to be a A/B testing solution that relied on advanced technology to let you be able to basically push out these live tests on your website to see what works or not. And we worked on that for a whole year before we switched gears to Topic. So I think going into this new venture, I really had the expectation that whatever we started with, we were going to eventually scrap, which is a healthy mindset, because one of the most deadly things when you're starting a new project is being stuck in a place where you have analysis paralysis, where you feel like there's so many things and I have so many ideas and I feel equally unsure about each of them. So I'm going to spend all my time figuring out which
Dissecting
one
everything.
is the right way. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, and that's deadly when it comes to starting a company. And so I think in terms of actionable ways to combat that, I like to imagine what failure actually looks like. Take one of those ideas that you're into and then imagine, like, what would it be like if that failed? Most of the time, it's not going to be that big of a deal to actually test it out and fail. And if it's a dead end, that doesn't mean that there aren't other ideas out there. So imagining, like visualizing, like what happens when a certain path ends up failing. And then the other thing is finding ways to make failure cheaper. I'm always looking for deals. I'm the kind of person who likes to spend like 30 minutes figuring out what $5 widget from Amazon is the best one. So I'm always looking for deals. And for me, I like to think of failure as having a cost, but if you do certain things, you can make that cheaper. So one thing is you can take that risk earlier in your life. Risks get more expensive as time passes. So, taking action now rather than waiting is a way to make failure cheaper. Using your skills to test out an idea, it makes failure cheaper. When you can rapidly prototype some basic version of what you're looking for. And this isn't even just for like product. This is for things like marketing or sales. You might have an idea of, let's start a ClosedWon Sales Show, and but it's going to be so expensive to put it on and get all this stuff and organize it. But what's like, let's make one episode and see how it goes, and then figure out did this feel right, and then that can help get rid of this like deadly paralysis of fearing of failure.
That's such a good point. Yeah, I think you're absolutely right, and it's interesting because I could just as easily hire another marketer and then pay a salary of $30,000, right? And then try to build out our content, and then put together like a whole strategy, buy used topic to come up with topics, and that cost is going to be so much more if I did give someone else that task versus just testing this out. And that was my initial theory with Dre. He's the one who asked me, like, hey, why don't you just try YouTube to build content? And that's where we are today. And it's actually a lot cheaper, way cheaper, because Ecamm, there's a 14-day free trial, and if things
Those
work
deals.
out well,
Always
yes,
looking for
those
deals. That's
deals.
another thing founders are into, looking for deals.
Yeah, so this is absolutely like it's a great tip. Putting a cost on your failure. Huh. Very good one. Give us another tip on how to combat these failures, some of the things that you've learned on your journey.
Yeah, so I think another thing that I like to think about is figuring out, defining what you have in your mind that's an assumption and whatever's a fact. A lot of times people think that they know absolutely with certainty that something's the case, and 99% of the time it's just an assumption. And one thing that I've been practicing more and more with Nick, and I just see ourselves doing this naturally so Nick is my co-founder on Topic, and he was also my co-founder on TINT and Hypemarks, and so we've known each other since college. We've been working together for like
9
years now. 9 years now. And like after all that time, one pattern that I've observed is that when we're talking to each other about something we're passionate about, we'll say, assuming that, or my assumption is this, and that's why I think that we should go with this, rather than this is how it is that we should go with this. And by having that quick definition of, okay, this is an assumption, it really helps make it, it has a couple benefits. One, it detaches your ego from it. So if you're wrong, it's okay, because it was just an assumption. Like everybody assumes things. And then the other thing is it puts the other person, it lets the other person criticize your assumption without feeling like they're criticizing you, or your beliefs. And it's just a much better discussion, talking about assumptions rather than anything else.
Yeah, basic communication skills right here. I mean, that is a great way to start. Not an opinion, I guess. My assumption is, so labeling an idea as my assumption is this, or assuming that. I think that is such a actionable tip that anyone can apply, like right now. I'm gonna do it actually, because I always no, I do, because I have these conversations like with Charlene and my in-laws. I'm like, okay, assuming that I don't use that sentence, but I do use the phrase, well, let's test it out. So I always say that, let's test it out.
Yeah, that's a good phrase too.
So definitely I'm gonna start with that. So my next question then is things to avoid. To be a successful founder, what must we avoid? Top 3 things. Let's just think of 3 things.
Yeah, for me, one, I think that this happens to everyone, even people who listen to shows about startup advice, is feeling hesitant that there's competition in a space, or feeling unnerved by it. It's just natural, like if you're competing in a sport and that there's going to be other teams that are better than you out there, it feels like, this makes the idea of failure so much more real, because those are the guys or girls who are going to be eating my lunch, And so people tend to avoid competition, and that manifests itself in all sorts of ways. Like at the very beginning, people are always, I think this is what leads to people coming up with as inventive of ideas as possible to start their business. They're like, oh, this is something that's never been done before. It's using a whole new technology. It's truly something that no one's ever seen before. And that's usually for me, like, a red flag, because that is like,
It's
those kinds of projects are so much harder to sell and market and communicate on. And so, you know, like, you really do want to go towards those hotter markets that do have competition, that have players in the space, and see how you can innovate, but not in a way that's so different that, you know, there's nobody like you anymore. Um, and so, yeah, avoiding competition is the behavior you don't want to do. And the behavior that you do want to do is to get close to the competition.
Yeah, I actually read your other blog. It's your competitive analysis. It was just like the first thing, and you mentioned something in there. This is just from my recollection. You said something like, if you think your idea has never been built before, guess what? I hate to break it to you, but it's already been actually built by someone else in one form or another. And you break it down because you're trying to push yourself on how to put together this market analysis, because you didn't have training on it. And I was just so impressed at how thorough you break down your market for topic.
Yeah,
So,
definitely. There's in terms of actionable advice, you know, one thing that I feel like not enough people do is take advantage of some of the tooling out there, especially if you're in SaaS or something that's, you know, competing online. A lot of SEO software can be really useful for doing competitive analysis from a product development standpoint, because it helps you find, you know, every player in your space, how they're doing, what channels they're using, and to market. And then you know, who it helps also uncover who their target customer is, and figuring out that target customer. As you know, as someone who's a sales professional and marketing professional knows, that's gold. That's the real gold. You know, it's not the product. It's the customer and who they are and what they want. So
right,
yeah.
finding your ideal client profile, finding their pain point, and then building a solution that actually solves that pain. So creating that vision again. And so, what's another strategy or tip you think we should avoid as founders?
Yeah, I think another one ties into that, which is focusing too much on product. I am personally super guilty of this, because my co-founder Nick and I, we're both engineers. We're constantly building. We love ideating and thinking of cool stuff to build. But focusing too much on product and not enough on users and how they use your product is, I think, a major thing. And in terms of an actionable tip, one thing that I find myself doing more and more these days is looking at user sessions using a tool like LogRocket or Full Story. They basically let you watch your users as they're clicking around your app, and it's a much richer view than even asking them in person how they use your app, because you know, people forget, you know, even 30 minutes after, you forget how you use the tool or how useful it was to you. But when you're watching, you know, their little cursor go
Their
click back and
behavior,
forth, their
right?
behavior, it's like, it really helps you get in their head and what they're trying to accomplish. And so setting aside time regularly to watch those, you know, get some popcorn, get a drink, you know, and just watch them. Like, it's a really fascinating and good way to break out of that obsession with, like, what new feature should we build. It's more like, oh wow, like, they're using our product in a totally different way than I imagined, and this changes my perspective on everything. That's a sensation that I get quite a bit watching these sessions. Yeah.
Yeah, it's always good when you get to watch what your users are doing, because sometimes when you hop on these interviews, it could go all over the place. I mean, I've gone on so many calls, so many interviews, so many user discussions on how to improve and what they like about the product, and then the session turns out like, it turns into a more, I want this and I want that and I want this and I want that, and you're like, okay, you want everything. So it's very powerful to see what they're doing instead, on how to improve their current behaviors versus just giving them the world, I guess, or trying to.
Yeah, definitely. I think it's really interesting. I read a book a little bit ago. You might have read it too, called The Mom Test. It's doing product development interviews. But basically, it's sort of a funny name for a book, but basically the premise is that, most people are going to give you a rosy picture, and they're not going to want to disagree with you when you interview them and you're trying to learn about what value you're adding. So really, the only things you can trust when you ask somebody is their current behavior and their past behavior. And anything about the future is a little more challenging to discern, because it's going to be influenced by what they think you want them to say, or a future that might not actually be true to what they actually want. So yeah, that's if you haven't read that book, I'd definitely check that out. It's called The Mom Test.
Definitely. I just ran into this actually with a sales call not too long ago. It was a long, long call. And so usually on my sales calls, what I do is I try to get their current behavior. I ask very simple questions. Walk me through your flow. And they'll tell me about the flows, but then like a couple days later, they'll give me this Excel sheet of requirements, and 5 tabs of requirements. So we hop on another call. And so my goal is usually to figure out with every feature, okay, this feature, how often do you use it? What's the frequency? How painful is it? And is this only a limitation of your current software? Is there a possible better solution? So it turns out this particular conversation, I can't really disclose, but it turns out that whenever they upload a document, it messes up the metadatas and the content. It turns into just one ugly block. And so they had to do crazy things to it. And they were asking for that particular feature, and they were adamant about this feature. And I'm like, you don't need it, because when you use our product and you upload your document, it actually shows you the line breaks, for instance. It's broken down so it's easy to consume. So things like this. And it's so fascinating at how some users, they will get really passionate about a feature that they think is a requirement when really it's not. There's another way to solve that feature. It could just be a better way to upload a document.
Definitely. I think it's thinking about the job that they're doing, the job to be done framework, to figure out what is the end task they're trying to accomplish can be a powerful way to think about how do I solve for their problem, rather than just crank out features that they might not use.
Right. Because at the end of the day, you're solving for 3 things. It's quality, speed, and then the cost effectiveness, right? And it's always those 3 things. And so let me ask you our next question here. My favorite question. How did you get your first 10 paying clients, either at TINT or Topic or Apparatus? Feel free to share.
Yeah, so with TINT, we used SEO as a way to get our first stream of clients. And Zen, because you were there, you were our first salesperson. And I remember when you said, let's set all of our passwords to 100K MRR. And I was like, you're so crazy, Zen. You're into this crazy manifestation stuff. I'm a total skeptic. I'm a very skeptical person. So I was like, okay, I'll do it to make Zen happy. And then we hit it so fast. I was like, Zen, you are our messiah, but yeah, I mean, those times, that was a lot of that was through SEO and people finding us through search. And with SEO as a channel, it sometimes does feel magical, in that way, because they're coming in hot, and you don't know where they're coming from. They just have this problem, they found you. So
and you had viral loop too, because remember, you had you embed the widget into their website, and then sometimes they would have all these events. I remember NASDAQ, there was like an IPO event or something, and then TINT was all over the New York Stock Exchange, and that was pretty exciting. So you had that natural viral loop built in.
Yeah,
with the
so
product.
so the product had a link back opportunity where our product, so for people listening, the context is our product was a social media widget that people can embed onto their websites, and it included a powered by Tint badge that linked back, and we strategically used that to power our SEO and help grow our authority. And so that was how we got our customers the first way. The second way, with Topic, the second venture, was actually totally different. It was relying on ex-employees who now work at really large corporations making warm intros for us. So
Apparatus?
for Apparatus and for Topic.
Oh.
So yeah, during that period when we were building both products, we were using that mainly as our channel to get our initial traction. And I think, there are so many ways to get new customers. Those just happen to be the two ways that we were able to do it.
Inbound and referrals.
Yeah, inbound and referrals.
Okay. So this one is going to be, it's long. There's a lot of things that you can share with this question. How do you grow as a successful founder, and really focus on being a successful founder as our theme here? But how do you think you, Nikhil, and also Tim, I think it really is that there's just magic here. How are you able to grow from 0 to $5 million in ARR? What were some of those successful traits that all three of you had that made this magic happen?
I think it's a lot of what you brought up at the very beginning. Not to toot my own horn, but Tim's humility and being able to be open with ideas and experimentation, both Nick and I's openness to listen to his off the wall ideas and implement them and test them out. Rapid iteration. I think one of the speakers at the very beginning of the show mentioned luck, which is a big part of it. I think some ideas, just even if you execute them poorly, will grow still, and or not poorly, but if you execute them in a way that at least solve the problem for your customers, and there's a lot of them, then it'll naturally grow, even if you're not doing all of the right things. I think in terms of growing the business to 5 million, a lot of that was due to that initial viral loop of being able to take what we had, which was an inherently linkable product, and then utilize that. So I think there's some lessons in there about figuring out what products' unique strengths are, and combining that for distribution. Some products are lucky because they'll have an inbuilt distribution mechanism, or viral type behavior built into them, But the hard thing about talking about that on a show like this to give advice is that there are a lot of products that just don't have that, So, I think without that, you can substitute in things like hustle, or having a founder who really loves and gets energy from that, can be a good substitute for that, because they are, a little like viral machine in and of themselves, just spreading the idea. In terms of growing the business as a founder, I'm trying to think, like, we would have only been able to grow to that point if we were compatible as people. So we saw so many companies break up along the way, at our co-working space, our friends who are also founders. It's tough because you're with that person longer than you are with probably your significant other. So, you need to be compatible. And I think that problem, unfortunately, can only be resolved at the very beginning, when you're choosing who to work with. And so I think being particular about that, knowing who you are, like knowing what makes you tick, and and telling the other person, hey, this really bothers me, that all that interpersonal communication stuff, I think is really key for being a great founder.
Did that happen in the beginning when you were dating around? Did you say basically, hey, this is what makes me tick, and this is what turns me off, these are my pet peeves? Was that like a part of the qualifying vetting stage? I'm curious. Or did it gradually like come out of the, as time went on, you've gone through different problems together, solved different problems together, and that's when that's how you understood one another, the compatibility test?
Yeah, I think at the beginning I had enough data points to feel confident in a decision. A lot like dating, like if you just date one person, it's really hard to tell if they're the one or not. But if you date 10 people, it's a lot easier, to figure out who is and who isn't. So having a lot of data points in the beginning, really critical. And then once my co-founders crossed that threshold for me and I started working with them, I was lucky enough that I had enough emotional intelligence at the time to convey when I was feeling frustrated about something. One thing that I think about, that I bring up sometimes as sort of a joke to Tim, is that he used to do this thing where he'd, like, when he wanted to get your attention, he'd come up to your face and sort of like snap your fingers in front of your face, like, hey.
I remember.
Yeah, and that irritated me so much. Like, I felt like really demeaned and like sort of like it was just a weird. I was just like, this is really disrespectful. And I think Tim didn't even realize. He was just so excited. He just, this is like how he, that's his energy level. So, that could have been a thing that I just like held in and like hated him for it. But I did that for a little bit. And then I told him straight up, hey, like, you can't do this anymore. This really bothers me and this is why. And yeah, we had a lot of moments like that, because there are just inherent things, mannerisms that people have. People have different definitions of respect.
Right.
People have,
Yeah, respect is a big thing. Having high EQ is another thing. With that, it's empathy. But the thing about empathy is like you have so much empathy, and it's like also breaking you internally. Like, oh my God, okay, I feel the other person. How I know you're a very empathetic person. Actually, how do you balance that out now?
Yeah, I feel sort of self-serving talking about how good at empathy I am, but it's one thing that really helped actually was when we were growing the company was to get a coach who was able to sort of push my boundaries in talking about ways that I was trying to bend over backwards to please other people and make everybody else happy, and helping me see some of those situations where it was taken too far and it was leading to situations where you're not actually serving that person. I think a great example was from one of the videos you played earlier about letting people go. When you hold that back and you feel like you're doing them a favor by not telling them, giving them feedback and training them, but it's actually holding them back. There are situations like that definitely are a common behavior, like a anti-pattern that happens in startups and companies.
There's also the opposite of the empathetic founder. There's also the psychopath founder as well. There's another article out there. I'll find it and talk about it for another session. But yeah, definitely, there's different types of founders. But with this particular...
I can't wait to listen to that show where you bring on a psychopathic founder. And then
if they allow me to interview them, usually they're gonna be like in the $1 billion state now. I'm just like, okay, so then please share with our audience where to find you.
Yeah, so you can check out Topic at usetopic.com. And there's links to my profile and Nick's profile in there. But again, my name is Ryo Chiba, and if you search for me on Google, I should be #1 thanks to my name being unique. So.
You are #1, actually. You own that rank. Let me go ahead and play this quick sales tip. Give me 1 second.
Sales. And this is the one where everyone goes, I don't want to be a salesperson. right? One of the things that we do in our business is we take experts and we teach them how to package their information up into products like ebooks and other information products and sell them. Well, when I start talking to these experts, almost universally, they say things like, I've got all the content, I just need to find someone who can market and sell it for me. And when I say to them, well, you know what would probably be good for you is to actually learn some marketing and sales, they go, oh, I don't want to learn. I'm not a salesman. They kind of like look down at salespeople like it's some like lower form of human business scum or something like that. And, you imagine, okay, I have to put on a funky, like a weird suit and like a windbreaker, like a car salesman in order to sell my product. I would never want to do that. Well, when you really learn sales, as I know you know, because you're a fantastic salesperson, that the best selling methods are consultative selling, where you don't sit down and try to talk someone into buying. You sit down and you say, let me ask you some questions. Let me learn about you and find out what all your problems are, and let me see if what I have is even a fit. And then once you've found out where they're at, what their problems are, what all the challenges they're facing are, and what they'd like to accomplish, then you sell solutions. You sell them fixing their problems. You sell them getting what they want, not your thing. And the best of the best of the best salespeople are the ones that walk in and sit down and ask a bunch of questions and then say, my product can't help you. Let me refer you to someone who can, because those are the people that win the trust, and that when they say, this is the thing that will solve your problem, the prospect says, that's the thing I need, because they're trustworthy. So learning consultative selling and really learning how to sell like a professional is very important.
So Ryo, tell us, how does Ryo close deals?
How do I close deals? Just like the video said, consultative selling. Asking people questions.
What are some of those questions that you ask?
I generally ask, what got you excited enough to request a demo from us? Or, just asking open-ended questions like, so tell me about why you reached out. How can we help? And then people love talking about their problems and how they found you and everything. So you just sit back and identify what are those key things that they're bringing up and find ways to tie that into, the solution that's being sold. In our case, it's content marketing software. In your case, it's sales automation. But yeah, that's how I sell.
All right, there you have it. Please stick around. Enjoy your drink and say hi to the audience before you leave. But I'm going to go ahead and switch over to our closing tro. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you,
wait,
Zen.
here we go. Wait, I was trying to get both of us on the screen. All right, I was talking to you from here. But yes, thank you for joining us. And again, stick around. Okay. There we go. Closers, I hope you enjoyed learning more about Ryo and his journey to becoming a successful, humble founder. Imagine graduating from University of Southern California, joining a startup as a founder as your first real career, building your startup for 9 years, selling it for 30 mil to FileStack, and then imagine building a marketing technology from scratch. A business that you can grow from 0 to $5 million in ARR. A business that generates over 250,000 backlinks and supporting over 10,000 paid customers. I believe that this is a journey that you can go on, and that the biggest mistake you can ever make is to follow someone else. Because you are a born leader and you have the capacity to inspire others. Yes, you'll make sacrifices, and yes, you'll make trade-offs. That's what it takes to become a successful founder. Listen to Ryo's lessons. Learn as much as you can for free. These lessons will change you if you let them. In the following weeks, we are going to cover Josh Harkis, Eric Singh, David Smook, Amanda Greenberg. They're all queued up and they're here to share their secrets on how to build a successful startup. And if you haven't already, be sure to smash subscribe. Until next time, keep on closing. Peace. Becoming a successful entrepreneur isn't easy, but it's not impossible. Subscribe to my channel today, and together, let's figure out how to grow.
Bring that ass back like a boom.